Captain Paul Gunn turned a hopeless bomber into a devastating gunship, sinking 800 Japanese ships, destroying 2,000 aircraft, and killing 85,000 soldiers while losing only a handful of Allied planes. His innovations shifted the Pacific War, saved New Guinea, and paved the way for modern attack aircraft, forever changing aerial combat. At 7:42 a.m. on August 17, 1942, Captain Paul Gunn crouched beneath the wing of a Douglas A-20 Havoc at Eagle Farm Airfield near Brisbane, observing mechanics install 50 caliber machine guns into the bomber's nose where the bombardier once sat. At 43, with 21 years in the Navy, his wife and 4 children were trapped in a Japanese prison camp in Manila. The 5th Air Force was losing bombers faster than replacements arrived. In July alone, the 3rd Attack Group lost 11 A-20s, trying to strike Japanese convoys from high altitude. Bombardiers couldn't hit moving ships, and flying lower left them vulnerable to deck gunners. Captain Ed Lenner had seen 3 of his crews burn in the Coral Sea the week before. Japanese reinforcements to New Guinea seemed unstoppable. Gunn had another idea. If bombers flew low enough to skip bombs across the water like stones, they could hit ships directly. First, though, they had to survive the approach, which meant overpowering deck guns with forward firepower, effectively turning bombers into strafers. The problem was straightforward. The A-20 Havoc carried 4 30 caliber machine guns in the nose, but 30 caliber rounds bounced off ship armor like pebbles. Gunn needed 50 caliber guns, 4 mounted where the bombardier sat, firing straight ahead, totaling 1,700 rounds per minute. General George Kenny, new 5th Air Force commander, gave Gunn 1 week to prove the concept. Gunn used 50 caliber guns salvaged from wrecked P-39 and P-40 fighters. The pilots were dead, but the guns remained. He mounted the weapons on a steel frame inside the nose compartment. Each gun weighed 64 pounds, with 4 guns and 200 pounds of ammunition. The added weight shifted the aircraft's center of gravity forward. The test flight nearly killed the pilot. The A-20 barely climbed and threatened to nose over. Gunn spent 2 days rebalancing the plane, moving equipment aft and adjusting the tail trim. The second test pilot reported the aircraft flew like it was angry, but it flew. On September 12th, 16 modified A-20s struck the Japanese airfield at Buna, flying at treetop level with guns blazing. They destroyed 14 aircraft on the ground and suppressed every anti-aircraft position without losing a single plane. Kenny demanded more, but the A-20 had limitations: insufficient range to reach Japanese bases across the Owen Stanley Mountains and too light a bomb load. Gunn needed a larger platform, the B-25 Mitchell, offering longer range, heavier payload and more space for guns. In December, he removed the bombardier and nose guns from a B-25C and installed 450 caliber guns in the nose, 4 more in fuselage cheek packs, and rotated the top turret forward. 10 forward-firing guns in total, later adding 2 on each side for 14 guns, capable of delivering 215 pounds of lead per second. Ground crews called it Papy's Folly. Gunn flew the prototype to charter towers to demonstrate it to the 3rd Attack Group. Nose heavy, the plane threatened to drop on takeoff, requiring full back pressure to maintain level flight. Once airborne, however, the B-25 was a flying destroyer. Kenny ordered 12 more conversions immediately. The 81st Air Depot Group in Townsville worked 18-hour days to modify every available B-25, and by February 1943, 30 Strafers were ready. Engineers in Ohio examined the modifications for 3 days, then recommended grounding all B-25s, claiming weight and balance issues would prevent proper flight. Kenny in Washington walked into General Arnold's office and reported that 12 of the impossible planes had just destroyed a Japanese convoy in the Bismar Sea, with 60 more under modification in Australia. Arnold quickly dismissed the engineers. The Battle of the Bismar Sea began with intelligence intercepts on February 28, 1943. Allied codebreakers in Melbourne decrypted Japanese naval messages about a convoy of 8 transports and 8 destroyers carrying nearly 7,000 troops from Rabat to New Guinea. General Kenny had 72 hours to intercept. The convoy traversed 400 miles of open water in the Bismar Sea. Japanese commanders relied on poor March weather for cover. Low clouds and heavy rain limited visibility, but they underestimated the bombers. On March 2nd, reconnaissance spotted the convoy. B-7 flying fortresses attacked from 15,000 feet, dropping 137 bombs with claimed hits, but post-battle analysis revealed zero damage. High-altitude bombing against moving ships failed. The Japanese convoy pressed on, scattering along the New Guinea coast at night, with destroyers screening the transports. Japanese commanders believed they'd reach Lille by dawn on March 4th to unload troops under fighter cover, unaware of the strafers waiting. Captain Ed Lunner briefed the 92nd Bomb Squadron at Port Moresby on March 2nd 12 B-25 Strafers, 30 modified A-20s, Royal Australian Air Force bow fighters for top cover, and P-38 Lightnings to counter Japanese Zeros. The Strafers would attack at masthead height, 50 feet above the water, firing at point-blank range. The plan overwhelmed deck guns with concentrated firepower, skip bombs across the water, and retreat before Zeros arrived. Elner had flown one practice mission. His navigator asked what would happen if the Strafer came under fire. Garner said they'd find out tomorrow. At 6:30 a.m. on March 3rd, 137 aircraft assembled over Cape Ward Hunt. B-7s attacked first to draw defensive fire, with transports opening fire into the sky. One B-7 turned back damaged, the rest continued. Then the Strafers arrived, led by Lunner at wave-top height. 14 forward-firing guns per aircraft, 168 guns total across 12 Strafers, formed a 300-yard wide wall of fire. The crew of the transport Kyoku C. Maru spotted them at 2 miles and attempted to turn. Too late. B-25s opened fire at 800 yards, 50 caliber rounds cutting through the superstructure, shredding the bridge, and killing anti-aircraft crews. 3 bombs dropped at 100 yards. The first skipped into the hull below the waterline, detonating in the engine room. The second hit midship. The third missed. Kyoku Maru was dead in the water within 30 seconds, burning and listing. Tao Maru attempted to escape at 15 knots, but strafers at 240 knots bracketed the ship, killing all anti-aircraft crews and slicing through the bridge. 8 bombs were dropped, 5 hit, breaking the ship in half, drowning soldiers below decks. Survivors jumped into the sea, weighed down by gear. Australian bow fighters strafed the destroyer Shikami, neutralizing its defenses. When the B-25s attacked, Shikami was defenseless. 3 strafers attacked from multiple angles, and bombs hit port starboard and amidships. Fires spread, and the crew abandoned ship 2 hours later. By 9 a.m., the convoy was scattered over 40 square miles, 5 transports burning or sinking, 2 destroyers crippled. Remaining ships attempted to flee but failed. The strafers returned at 2 hot RPM with fresh bombs and full ammunition. Japanese fighters were grounded. The transport I.O. Maru took 12 bomb hits. Its magazine detonated, visible from Port Moresby 130 miles away. No wreckage or survivors remained. 500 soldiers perished instantly. Captain Ed Lunner attacked the transport Owawa Maru at low altitude, with his co-pilot counting 14 fires on deck, soldiers jumping overboard, and silent anti-aircraft guns. Sailster's bombardier released bombs at point-blank range. 2 bombs struck, both hitting their target. The transport sank by the stern and overturned. The modified A-20 Havocs pursued the damaged destroyers. Asashio attempted to rescue survivors in the water. 3 A-20s attacked from different angles, while the destroyer's crew concentrated on rescue, unaware of the strafers until the guns unleashed. Asashio took hits on the forward deck and bridge, burned through the night and went down at dawn on March 4th. By the evening of March 3rd, the entire Japanese convoy had been annihilated. 8 transports destroyed, 4 destroyers sunk. Of nearly 7,000 troops leaving Rabat, fewer than 1,200 reached Leh. 2,700 were rescued and returned to Rabat. The rest drowned in the Bismar Sea. Allied losses were minimal: 4 aircraft, 1 B-7 and 3 P-38s, with 13 aircrew killed. General MacArthur called it one of the most decisive and complete battles ever. The Japanese never tried to reinforce New Guinea by convoy again. The Southwest Pacific War had shifted, thanks to Paul Gunn's impossible gunship. In Australia, engineers were drafting reports claiming the B-25 modifications couldn't work. On March 5th, Kenny sent a message to General Hap, Arnold, Commerce Destroyer modifications, approved for production. It noted that 12 B-25 strafers had just destroyed an entire convoy and requested immediate integration of forward gun packages into all May B-25s. Arnold called North American Aviation President J.H. Dutch Kindleberger, who said his engineers needed to see the modifications. Arnold replied that the designer, Paul Gunn, was coming. Gunn hesitated to leave Australia. His wife and 4 children remained in Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila, held since January 1942. He flew missions daily, hoping to bring the Philippines closer to liberation. Kenny ordered him to California, needing factory-built Strafers, and promised Gunn he'd return to the Pacific within 6 weeks. Gunn arrived in Long Beach, California, on March 27, 1943. North American aviation spanned 140 acres, employing 20,000 workers on 3 shifts, producing 1 B-25 every 4 hours. Engineers studied Gunn's hand-drawn blueprints, asking about stress tests, wind tunnels, and center of gravity issues. Gunn explained his solutions, moved radio equipment aft, welded blast tubes to prevent aluminum damage from 50 caliber guns. Over 2 weeks, engineers reverse-engineered the field modifications into production plans, strengthened the nose, redesigned mounts, reinforced the fuselage, calculated the center of gravity, and adjusted the tail. The first factory-built B-25G Strafer rolled off the line May 10, 1943, with 450 caliber guns in the nose and a 75mm M4 cannon, using tank ammunition capable of sinking destroyers. Gun test fluid. The cannon recoiled 4 feet, shaking the aircraft, reloaded manually by the navigator every 30 seconds. Gunn assured it would work against ships. North American Aviation built 400 B-25Gs, then improved the design. The B-25H added 4 more 50 caliber guns in the cheeks, totaling 14 forward-firing guns, kept the 75mm cannon with improved recoil, and allowed faster reloading. The B-25J removed the cannon, added 4 more 50 caliber guns, reaching 18 forward-firing weapons, making it the most heavily armed production bomber in history. 4,900 B-25Js were produced and delivered to the Pacific, starting October 1943. Gunn returned to Australia in May, having been gone 6 weeks. His family remained in Manila. The Strafers continued attacking Japanese targets. April 1943 destroyed 16 troop-carrying barges near Finschhofen. May sank 12 cargo ships at Wewak Harbour. June hit Borneo oil facilities. The Japanese stopped moving supplies by day, but the Strafers adapted, attacking at night using radar, skip bombing from 50 feet, coordinating with PT boats that illuminated targets with searchlights. The Japanese called them Black Death. On November 2, 1943, Major Ben Fridge led 4 squadrons, 59 B-25s, into Rabah Harbour, totaling 137 Allied aircraft. The harbour held 38 vessels: cruisers, destroyers, tankers, cargo ships, minesweepers. Strafers attacked at masthead height through phosphorus smoke, striking from multiple directions. In 15 minutes, 30 ships were hit, 5 sunk, 12 irreparably damaged. Gunn flew that mission, 44 years old despite being staff, motivated by his family still in Manila. Reports from Santo Tomas worsened. Reduced rations, scarce medicine, prisoners dying of malnutrition and disease. Japanese threatened to execute all prisoners if Allies approached Manila. Gunn requested to fly the first liberation mission over Manila. Kenny agreed. Strafers evolved through 1944. Some carried 8 5-inch rockets, napalm tanks, or parafrag bombs with parachutes for low-altitude drops. Combined strikes became standard. B-24s bombed from high altitude to distract gunners, while Strafers hit low. In 8 months of 1944, 5th Air Force Strafers destroyed 947 Japanese aircraft on the ground, sank 273 ships, killed 38,000 soldiers. Gunn added fuel tanks, improved gun cooling, and developed faster loading methods. Some B-25s had unique last-minute modifications invented by Gunn. Other theaters adopted his designs. Mediterranean B-25s targeted German convoys. China-Burma-India Theater B-25s struck Japanese supply lines. On October 20, 1944, Americans landed at Leyte. Manila's liberation was 3 months away. Gunn's family had been captive nearly 3 years. He flew multiple daily missions, vowing to continue until they were free. On November 27, 1944, Japanese bombers attacked Tacubon airfield at 0330. 56 aircraft, including Betty bombers and Zeros. Gunn was in the operations tent when bombs struck. Shrapnel hit his leg and shoulder. Despite bleeding, He tried to check his aircraft before collapsing 30 feet away. Evacuated to Leyte Hospital, shrapnel had severed an artery. Surgeons said 6 months minimum recovery, possibly longer. Gun 45 could have retired, but refused to leave until his family was free. The Battle of Manila began February 3, 1945. Fighting was brutal house to house. Santo Tomas camp was liberated the same day, freeing 3,700 prisoners. His wife Paulie weighed 89 pounds, daughter Julia 63, his son Nathaniel had malaria, youngest daughter dysentery, but all survived. Gun flew to Manila February 4th against orders, leg bandaged, using a cane, and reunited with his family for 4 hours before returning to Leyte. The war continued. B-25s with guns modifications kept flying. By war's end, 9,600 B-25s were built. Nearly 5,000 were Strafers, with forward guns based on his design, sinking over 800 ships, destroying 2,000 aircraft on the ground, and killing 85,000 soldiers. Gun never flew combat again, retired as Colonel June 30, 1948, at 48. He returned to the Philippines to rebuild Philippine Airlines, starting with 3 surplus C-47s, expanding operations across the archipelago, awarded the Distinguished Service Star in 1947 by President Manuel Roxas. He grew the airline internationally, adding DC-3s, DC-4s, Convoy 340s, reaching San Francisco by 1956. Gun flew constantly, driven by lessons from the war and memories of lost crews. On October 10, 1957, he chartered a Beechcraft Model 18 from Manila to Baguio. Weather deteriorated into thunderstorms over the Cordillera Mountains. Radio went silent at 10:47. Wreckage found 3 days later. All aboard perished. Paul Irvin Gunn died October 11, 1957, aged 57. The Philippine government held a state funeral attended by 6,000 people, including veterans and former prisoners. Kenny sent a wreath. The Manila Times obituary noted his decorations, Bismar Sea role and liberation missions, but not the full impact. 5,000 B-25 Strafers built with his modifications, 800 ships sunk, 2,000 aircraft destroyed, 85,000 enemy soldiers killed. His Strafer concept revolutionized air combat, turning bombers into multi-role weapons, influencing aircraft like the AC-130 and A-10. North American Aviation hired him in 1948 as a consulting engineer. He contributed to B-45 design and gun mounting systems, giving most earnings to veteran organizations. His son Nathaniel joined the Air Force, flew B-52s, retired as colonel, and wrote a biography of his father, Papi Gun, published in 1994. The National Museum of the Pacific War preserves Gunn's original gun-mounting drawings. He was inducted into the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall in 2008. Philippine Airlines still operates today, with Gunn's portrait in the Manila headquarters lobby, though most employees are unaware of his legacy.